My parents called a family Thanksgiving dinner to announce that I would be covering my brother's mortgage payments while he figured things out. They had no idea I had already accepted a remote promotion, quietly opened a new bank account in Colorado, and that the reason my brother was drowning in debt had absolutely nothing to do with a bad economy. This is where it starts, and I promise you, it gets worse before it gets better. The drive to my parents' house took 40 minutes on a good day. That particular Wednesday before Thanksgiving, it took an hour and 20 because of holiday traffic, and I spent most of it with both hands on the wheel, jaw clenched so tight, my dentist had been warning me for 2 years about stress fractures. I had a playlist going, something calm and instrumental, but I kept turning it down, then off, then back on again, unable to decide whether I wanted distraction or silence. I was 32 years old. I held a CPA license, managed the books for a regional healthcare network, and had recently been offered a fully remote senior position with a firm headquartered in Denver that would bump my salary by nearly 40%. I owned a small, meticulous apartment that I kept organized the way I kept everything in my life, methodically and with a clear exit strategy. And yet, pulling off the highway toward the suburb I had grown up in, I felt 17 again in the worst possible way. Shoulders tight, stomach hollow, already rehearsing answers to questions I didn't want to be asked. My brother was 35. His name was Derek, and for as long as I could remember, the word used to describe him in our household was potential. Derek has so much potential. Derek just needs the right opportunity. Derek is a big-picture thinker. He doesn't do well with the day-to-day details. What those phrases actually translated to, in plain language, was this. Derek had never held a job for longer than 14 months, had never paid his own rent without supplemental help, and had never once in his adult life been held accountable for a single consequence of his own decisions. What he had done was charm, perform, and redirect blame with a consistency that I had to grudgingly admit was its own kind of talent. I parked in the driveway behind his truck, a model that had come out the previous year and that I knew for a fact he couldn't afford. I sat for a moment. Through the kitchen window, I could see my mother moving around, the warm gold light of the stove hood making everything look cozy and deceptive. I checked my work bag in the passenger seat. My leather portfolio was there, the dark brown one I carried everywhere, stuffed with documents I'd been quietly compiling for the past 3 weeks. I zipped it shut and left it in the car. Inside, the house smelled like turkey and pie, and the particular brand of tension that my family had always confused with togetherness. My father was at the kitchen table with a glass of wine, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I came in, nodded once, and looked back down. My mother turned from the stove, wiping her hands on a dish towel, scanning me the way she always did, a full top-to-bottom assessment that managed to communicate both love and disappointment in under 2 seconds. "You look tired," she said. "Long drive," I said. Derek was in the living room, sprawled in the recliner that had been my father's since before I was born. He was on a video call, laughing at something, completely at ease. He glanced at me and lifted 2 fingers off the armrest in a lazy half-wave. I set my coat down and went to help with the table. Dinner was fine in the way that holidays with dysfunctional families are fine, which is to say no one said the real thing for about 45 minutes. We talked about the weather, about a cousin's new baby, about whether the football game would be worth watching. My mother refilled everyone's glass twice. My father made a joke about retirement that wasn't really a joke, and Derek told a story about a business contact he'd met that week, someone who was apparently very interested in his latest venture, something involving app development and passive income that he described in deliberately vague terms that I recognized as the verbal equivalent of a shell game. Then my mother set down her fork, folded her hands on the table, and looked at me. I had felt it coming. The energy had been pointing at me for the entire meal, the way a compass needle points north. "We need to have a conversation," she said. As a family, my father cleared his throat. Derek suddenly found the centerpiece interesting. "Okay," I said. She explained it the way she always explained Derek's situations, with softness and euphemism layered over the hard edges like a slipcover over a broken couch. The market had been difficult. His most recent income stream had encountered some obstacles. His landlord had raised the rent, which was predatory and unfair. His savings were not where they needed to be. He was working on several opportunities simultaneously and just needed a runway. How much of a runway? I asked. My father leaned forward. $1,800 a month, just for the next 6 months, maybe a year. Just, I repeated. You're in a good position, sweetheart, my mother said, using the word sweetheart the way people use anesthesia before a procedure. You have a stable income. Derek is trying to build something real this time. He just needs the support of his family. Derek was looking at me now with an expression I could only describe as expectant patience, the look of a person who already knows they're getting the gift, but is waiting for the bow to be untied. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't grateful. He was waiting. You know what I make? I asked. We have a general sense, my father said, and you've decided what I should do with it. We've discussed it. As parents, yes, I looked at my plate. There was a specific kind of exhaustion that came not from being asked for something unreasonable, but from realizing the people asking genuinely believed their request was reasonable. They weren't cruel people, not in the way the word is usually meant. They were people who had spent 35 years arranging the world around one child's comfort and had simply incorporated me into the infrastructure without ever asking if I consented to the blueprint. I thought about the portfolio sitting in my car. I thought about the email I had sent 3 weeks ago to the HR director at my new company, confirming my start date. I thought about the storage unit I had already rented in Denver and the boxes I had been quietly shipping there for the past month. I had not planned to say anything yet. The plan was to leave cleanly. No announcement, no argument, just a forwarding address and a politely worded text after the fact. But sitting at that table, watching Derek pick up his fork again like the conversation was already resolved, I felt something calcify in my chest. I have a counter-proposal, I said. My mother smiled with relief she hadn't earned yet. Good. Good. I'm glad you're being open to. I'm moving to Denver, I said. The table went quiet. I accepted a remote position 3 weeks ago. It's a senior role, significantly more than I'm making now. I've already arranged housing. I set my napkin on the table. I fly out December 2nd. My father's face did something complicated. December 2nd. That's 2 weeks from now. 11 days, yes. You can't just... Derek started. I can, I said. It's a free country. You didn't say anything, my mother said, her voice doing the particular tremble it did when she felt ambushed, which was ironic given the circumstances. You sat here all through dinner and didn't say anything. You sat through dinner not saying anything too, I pointed out. We both waited for dessert. This is unbelievable. Derek pushed back from the table. So you're just leaving. You're leaving me to figure this out by myself. You're 35, I said. Figuring things out by yourself is the definition of being 35. Derek needs you, my mother said. Derek is a grown adult who has had 35 years to develop the tools for managing his own finances. You've always been like this, Derek said, and his voice had shifted into something harder, the performance of easy charm dropping away the way it always did when he didn't get what he wanted immediately. Always had to be the responsible one, the smart one. You love holding it over us. I love having a savings account. Yes, Derek. My father held up a hand. Then he turned to me, and his expression was the one he used when he wanted to appear reasonable while not actually being reasonable. Your mother and I are asking you for help. As your parents, we helped you when you needed it. When did you help me? We co-signed your first car loan, which I paid off in full, ahead of schedule. We paid for part of your college tuition. You paid for 2 semesters. I covered the rest with scholarships and part-time work. Derek's tuition was fully covered for 5 years, including 2 gap years and a semester in Florida that was ostensibly for an internship, and was, as far as I could tell, mostly for the beach. My father's mouth tightened. Derek made a sound that was trying to be a laugh. Denver, my mother said again, quietly, like she was testing the word for structural damage. You're really going. I'm really going. And you won't help your brother. I looked at her. I looked at her for a long time, long enough that she looked away first. I'll think about it, I said, which was not a yes, but which I knew she would hear as a yes. and which bought me enough time to get back to my car and drive the 40 minutes home before anyone started making concrete demands. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and my leather portfolio and the specific focused energy of someone who has been suspicious for a while and has finally decided to confirm what they already know. I was an accountant. Numbers were my native language, and something about my parents' situation had been speaking to me in a dialect I recognized, but hadn't wanted to translate. They had a paid-off house. My father had retired with a pension from 28 years at an insurance firm. My mother had her own partial pension and a 401k she'd been building since before I was born. They were not wealthy, but they were not people who should have been unable to absorb a single adult child's modest rent gap. The math had never added up, and I had been choosing, for the past year, not to look directly at the reason why. I called my college roommate, Priya, who now worked in compliance at a regional bank. Not their bank, a different one. But she had connections, and she knew what to look for. "I need to ask you something," I said, "and I need you to be honest with me, even if the honest answer is bad." She said, "When have I ever been anything but?" I told her what I knew. The amounts, the timeline, Derek's various ventures, the pattern of my parents always being behind financially, despite income that should have made them comfortable. I told her about the app company, the passive income streams, the contacts he was always mentioning, but never seemed to produce results. Priya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I can't access their accounts. You know that." "I know. But I can tell you what to look for, if you have access." "They added me as an authorized user on their joint account 2 years ago," I said, "after my father's health scare. In case of emergency." "Log in," she said. I logged in. What I found did not make the room spin, exactly. It made everything go very, very still. Over the past 22 months, there had been 47 transfers out of my parents' joint account to an external account. The amounts ranged from $300 to $4,000. The total, when I added it up on a notepad, because I needed to see the number written in my own handwriting to believe it, was $61,000. The external account number wasn't one I recognized, but the transfer memos, when they were filled in at all, said things like investment return settlement and consulting fee reimbursement and family loan repayment, the last of which was particularly brazen, given that it implied a loan being paid back, when what was actually happening was money flowing in one direction only, steadily, for nearly 2 years. I didn't call Derek. I didn't call my parents. I sat with what I knew for 4 days, adding it to the portfolio, printing the transaction histories, organizing them by date and amount the way I organized everything, methodically and with a clear exit strategy. On the 5th day, I got a text from my mother that said, "Sweetheart, we need a decision. Derek's landlord is giving him until the 15th. I typed back, "I'll come by Saturday." On Saturday, I walked into my parents' house with the leather portfolio under my arm. Derek was already there, which told me the conversation had been coordinated. He was sitting at the kitchen table with a coffee, wearing a jacket that retailed for $300 and looking like a man who expected to walk out of this meeting with a check. My mother had made coffee and arranged a small plate of cookies. The performance of normalcy over the framework of an intervention. "Sit down," my father said. The way he said things when he wanted to project authority that the situation wasn't actually granting him. I sat. I set the portfolio on the table in front of me. "We're glad you came," my mother started. "We want to resolve this as a family, without anyone feeling." "I have some questions first," I said. Derek looked at the portfolio. "What kind of questions?" my father said. "Financial questions." I opened the portfolio and removed the first set of pages. "I've been an authorized user on your joint account for 2 years. I logged in this week." I slid the printed transaction history across the table to my father. I highlighted the relevant transfers. The silence was different from the Thanksgiving silence. That one had been the silence of a demand being issued. This one was the silence of people who had just heard a sound they weren't prepared for. My father looked at the pages. He looked at them for a long time without speaking. "Those transfers," I said, "total $61,000 over 22 months. They go to an external account I don't recognize." I turned to Derek. "I think you recognize it." Derek's face did exactly what faces do when the ground has shifted and the person hasn't caught up to it yet. He reached for his coffee, then stopped. "Mom," I said, "did you know this account was being depleted?" My mother's hand had gone to her mouth. "Why don't we have separate logins?" "I never." "I handle the finances," my father said, but his voice had lost whatever authority it had when he told me to sit down. He was still staring at the pages. "I review everything. Then you've seen these transfers." A long pause. Derek explained them. He said they were reimbursements, business expenses. I thought he was paying us back. "He was moving money from your account to another account," I said. "There's no corresponding inflow." "It's not a reimbursement. It's a transfer." "She's misreading it," Derek said. I looked at him. "It's a complicated accounting structure," he said, and the audacity of saying that sentence to a CPA in the room was so absolute it almost impressed me. "You wouldn't understand the specifics without context." "Explain the context." "It's not your business." "You just asked me to fund your lifestyle for the next year," I said. "You made it my business." "Derek." My father's voice was low. "Is this your account number?" "Dad." "Is this your account?" Derek set down his coffee cup. Something moved through his expression. A calculation, a reassessment, and then a pivot. He went from casual to wounded in under 3 seconds, a transition I had watched him execute since we were children. "I was going to pay it back," he said. "I am paying it back. I have 2 deals that are closing in January. The money will be back in the account with interest by February. I was investing it. I was investing it for us, for the family." "What deals?" my father said. "You don't need to know the specifics." "What deals, Derek?" He gave the name of an app company I had never heard of, and an investment vehicle that sounded, to my professional ears, extremely similar to a structure I had flagged as high risk in a client report 14 months ago. "That company dissolved in September," I said. I had looked it up. State filing records. They ceased operations. Derek said nothing. My mother made a sound that wasn't quite a word. "So the money that was invested," my father said, "is gone." Silence. "How much of this account is left?" my father said, still looking at the pages rather than at Derek. I had calculated it. I had calculated it and verified it twice because I had hoped I was wrong. "After the transfers and your regular expenses, you have approximately $14,000 in liquid assets." My mother stood up. She didn't go anywhere. She just stood, the way people sometimes do when the body needs to move because the information is too large to absorb while sitting still. "We have $14,000, she said. "We were going to retire on." "Your pension is untouched," I said, because I needed her to hear at least one steady thing. "Your monthly income from the pension and the 401k distributions is intact." This was the liquid savings. "But it's significant." My father put the papers down very carefully. He looked at Derek. Derek was looking at the table. "You took $61,000 from us," my father said. "I was going to. You took $61,000 from your mother and me. It wasn't like that. I was building something. I needed capital to." Without asking, Derek stopped talking. What happened next in that kitchen was something I had never witnessed in 32 years inside this family. My father, who had spent those 32 years building a wall of excuses around Derek, who had told me at the Thanksgiving table 4 days earlier that family helps family while asking me to supplement a shortfall he didn't know his son had manufactured, looked at Derek with an expression that contained no shelter at all. Just a flat, clear, devastating recognition. I gathered my papers. I put them back in the portfolio. I stood up. "I'm not paying his rent," I said. "I'm not funding the shortfall. What I will do is send you both the transaction records formatted for a bank dispute if you want to attempt to recover any portion of it. You should also speak to an attorney." Mabel, my mother, started, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking at Derek. I put on my coat. I picked up my bag. I had said everything I could usefully say, and the remaining things in the room were between 3 people who had spent decades arranging themselves in a specific configuration, and it was going to take whatever time it took for that configuration to collapse. I drove home. I finished packing. I flew out on December 2nd, as scheduled. Nobody called to say goodbye. I didn't expect them to. Denver in winter is colder than it looks in photographs, the light harder and sharper, the mountains so close on clear days that they feel like a wall you might walk into. My new apartment was on the 4th floor of a building near a coffee shop I walked to every morning, acquiring the habit of the walk first, and then the coffee, and then, slowly, the feeling of a morning belonging entirely to myself. For 3 weeks, I heard nothing from my family. I had blocked Derek's number the day after the kitchen confrontation, a step so overdue, it felt like finally removing a splinter that had been in so long the skin had grown around it. My parents had my email. They did not use it. I was at my desk on a Wednesday afternoon, working through a quarterly reconciliation, when my phone rang with a number from my hometown that I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was from a detective at the local police department. My hands were very still when I called back. The detective explained it in the practiced, neutral tone of someone who had delivered this kind of information many times. There had been a credit application submitted in my name approximately 8 months ago, and another 5 months ago, and a third one 3 months ago. 3 separate credit cards, totaling a combined credit limit of $22,000. All 3 had been opened, without my knowledge. All 3 had been maxed out. "Do you know anyone who might have had access to your personal information?" the detective asked. I thought about Derek, who had been in my apartment twice in the past year, once to help me move a piece of furniture and once for a dinner I had hosted for the family. I thought about the filing cabinet in my home office that I had never thought to lock because I had never thought I needed to. I thought about a brother who had moved $61,000 out of our parents' accounts and had apparently decided that a single source of theft was insufficient. "Yes," I said, "I have a very specific idea." I spent the next 2 hours on the phone with the fraud departments of 3 credit card companies, and then with an attorney. My company's HR department had referred me to for personal matters. The attorney was the kind of person who took notes without blinking and spoke in declarative sentences and made me feel, for the first time in the entire arc of this situation, like I was standing on firm ground. The detective told me later that when they went to interview Derek, he initially denied all knowledge of the accounts. Then he claimed he had meant to tell me. Then he said I had given him verbal permission, which was creative. Then he stopped talking and called a lawyer. My parents found out from the detective, not from me. I found this out because my mother emailed me for the first time in 3 weeks. The email was 1 paragraph long. It said that she didn't know about the credit cards. It said that she and my father were devastated. It said that they had made a lot of mistakes where Derek was concerned, and that they were beginning to understand how much those mistakes had cost everyone, including me. I read the email twice. Then I put my phone face down on the desk and looked out the window at the mountains for a long time. I wrote back 3 days later. I kept it short. I told her I believed that she hadn't known about the credit cards. I told her that I was not in a place to have regular contact right now, but that I was not gone forever, and that the door for a real conversation was open when they were ready for one that didn't involve me solving a financial problem. She didn't respond immediately. That was fine. Derek was charged with identity theft and financial fraud. His attorney negotiated, as attorneys do, and what came out the other end was a guilty plea on 2 of the 3 counts, a repayment order that would follow him for years, and a suspended sentence contingent on compliance with a supervision program. The $61,000 from my parents' account was a separate civil matter, one that their attorney was pursuing and that I had no part in beyond providing the formatted documentation I had promised. The last piece I learned through my cousin, who had remained neutral throughout with the careful diplomacy of someone who wanted to stay on good terms with everyone. She told me that Derek's truck had been repossessed in January, that he was living with a friend, that my parents had needed to take a small loan against the house to cover an immediate gap in their expenses, the kind of gap that $61,000 missing dollars creates, and were restructuring their retirement budget with a financial advisor. She told me my mother was taking a part-time job, doing administrative work for a local dentist's office, that my father had been going on his daily walks again, something he had stopped doing when his health had been concerning the previous year, and that he seemed, in a particular way she couldn't fully name, lighter. I thought about that word, lighter. I thought about the Thanksgiving table and the coordinated ambush dressed up as a family dinner, I thought about the years of watching Derek move through the world like a man who had never learned that things have weight, that money is labor, that care is not an infinite resource. I thought about my mother's voice saying he just needs a runway, the phrase she had been saying in various forms my entire life, and how a runway only has value if the plane eventually takes off. I am not telling this story to say I won. I don't think that framing is accurate or particularly useful. What I can say is that I am sitting on my couch in Denver with a cup of coffee that has gone slightly cold because I got absorbed in something and forgot about it. And when I notice that I forgot about it, there is no tightening in my chest, no rehearsed response forming, no assessment of whether this moment is safe or whether the other shoe is about to drop. There is just a cold cup of coffee on a Saturday morning, and the quiet and the mountains visible if I angle toward the window, and the uncomplicated fact of a day that belongs to me. My parents have my email. We have exchanged a few messages, cautious ones, the kind of messages people send when they are trying to locate each other across a distance and aren't yet sure how much ground there is to cover. My mother asked once, in one of those messages, what she could have done differently. I sat with that question for a long time before I answered. I told her that the honest answer was a long one and that I didn't think email was the right format for it. I told her that when she was ready for a phone call, I would be ready for one too. She said, "I'll call you Sunday." I said, "I'll pick up." I still don't know what that conversation will look like. I don't know how much of it will be hard, or how long it will take to find a version of this family that is honest and proportional and clear about who owes what to whom. I don't know if my father will get there. I don't know if my parents, having spent 3.5 decades arranged around Derek, will know how to arrange themselves around the truth instead. But I know that I am here. I know that I did not hand over my savings to insulate someone from consequences they had earned. I know that the financial records I compiled in that leather portfolio, the documents I organized the same way I organize everything, with method and without sentimentality, ended up being the most important work I have done outside of a professional context. And I know that the coffee is cold, and I am going to get up and make another cup, and no one is going to call me dramatic for doing it. That's the whole story. That's enough.